Hey friends, welcome to the Canyon Pathways podcast, where we invite you to live like a son and lead like a father. Canyon Pathways is a global community of men on the journey from the striving of servanthood to the freedom of sonship as we traverse the canyon that is midlife leadership. My name is Noel Bouché, and I'm the founder and part of the leadership team for this venture, and I'll be your guide throughout this podcast as we explore and discover what it means to live like a son so we can lead like a compassionate father. Most episodes of the podcast will have a conversation segment with a Canyon Pathways brother from somewhere around the globe, where we sit down and just explore what living like a son and leading like a father has meant to them and how it's had a transformative effect on their lives. But every once in a while, we'll back up and just take a little bit deeper dive into an aspect of Canyon Pathways, of our story, of our community, of our ethos, of our methodology. And we're going to do that here in a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about our spiritual direction, what it is, why we do it, how it's framed, what its contours are, and why it might be something that you want to consider in this stage of midlife leadership, this stage of your life. But before we get to it, we're going to dive into our field note. Field notes at Canyon Pathways are short essays where we're exploring a word that really embodies and entails a concept that we believe is connected closely to this journey of sonship, of living like a son, and out of that, leading like a father. And so we're going to sit with our field note on passion in this episode. Passion. Passion is something that we all want, we desire it, we look for it kind of innately. We're seeking that out in our life. What am I passionate about? What makes me passionate? And there's some seasons in life where that passion can either wane or it's simply not there in a part of our lives. And midlife is famous for it. We are all familiar with the concept of a midlife crisis, and many of us have experienced one to one degree or another, a crisis point where we come to a decision point. And in midlife, that's very common. But even before the crisis, a lot of people talk about just generally a midlife malaise. Just a stage somewhere in your late 30s, 40s, early mid 50s, where the energy, the vision, the passion just does not seem to be there. You feel stuck. Come to a place where either you have walked off the path, or the path has just become obscured by the dark wood or forest that we're walking through in our lives. And social science actually bears this out. Something called the happiness curve. Research, really longitudinal research over time, has identified that there's a true canyon in midlife when you chart it out, when you graph it out, because contentment, happiness is high in the teens, 20s, obviously barring major traumas that we're walking through, but generally a sense of positivity, of optimism, of passion, of hope for the future. And then go through your mid-20s into your 30s, and that starts to curve downward, the data shows, to finally somewhere in your 40s and 50s, generally over the population, it bottoms out. There's a low point of happiness or contentment and all the things that go into that. And then it starts to turn up. It starts to ascend, kind of come out of that valley of shadow, and happiness and contentment actually peak and actually get back to where they were in the 20s, when one reaches early 60s, mid 60s, late 60s, into the 70s. So very interesting phenomenon, and one that just, again, kind of backed by the research, but when you plot that data out, it shows us that we are walking through a canyon. When you are moving through your 40s and your 50s in midlife leadership, you've been married perhaps for a number of years, you've got children perhaps that you're raising and walking through all of their challenges, you've got perhaps aging parents. On top of that, you got your day job, you got customers, you got clients, you got employees, you got congregants that are making innumerable demands on your time and energy. And that's why we see that bottoming out of happiness. Is this all there was? Sometimes because it's expectations that weren't met, goals that have not been achieved. Other times It's because those goals have been achieved. And the fulfillment that we thought would be there is not. And instead we find an emptiness. And what is the emptiness oftentimes? It's passion. Just not passion. I don't feel the passion anymore in this relationship. I just don't feel the passion about what I'm doing, what I'm getting out of bed for every day. Feel a lack of passion. So that led us to explore what is this passion, and why is that this is something we walk through. And oh, by the way, is it really a lack of passion? And if it is a lack of passion, what does that mean? What is passion? What does it really mean to be passionate? That's what we look at here in our field note. Let's dive into it. Excited to explore this with you. We'll come on the other side with some takeaways and findings, but hope you enjoy this field note on passion. Passion. In one of my favorite films, the protagonist is on the cusp of signing a lucrative professional soccer contract when a personal tragedy derails his career. Years later, his father reflects upon the events of the past and mournfully sighs to a friend, "Sin pasión no se puede jugar fútbol." Without passion, you can't play soccer. I wonder, without passion, can you fully live life? For the Stoics and skeptics among us, the immediate answer might be a resounding yes. One might argue that cool, precise reason ought to fulfill our needs, not the hot, wild swings of our passion. But as Alexander Pope poetically pontificated, it is passion that catalyzes movement. Reason, powerful as it is, can only turn the rudder. It can steer, but not propel. The brain needs the heart and vice versa, but only the heart can move the lifeblood of the body. Perhaps some of the resistance to the part passion has to play lies in misdefining its nature. To be passionate, to follow one's passion, has often meant, to both speaker and hearer, a pursuit of some new interest, a quest for meaning, or fidelity to an issue or idea one has alighted upon. It's often likened to zeal, which is an ardor or enthusiasm for some particular goal or course of action. That's not an objectively bad thing, of course, though in practice, one person's zeal is often another person's lunacy. But passion is not zeal. Coming down to us from the Latin passionem, meaning suffering or enduring, passion is at root a form of suffering, an enduring of some experience that, once culminated, results in a long, hoped-for end. Indeed, for centuries in Latin and later in English, the word passion was a specific reference to the suffering and death of the Messiah. The passion of the Christ on the cross was the singular use and meaning of the term. Passion, then, motivates us not through an eager interest or enthusiasm, but through a deep-seated aching, a piercing longing for something that lies on the other side of an event or period of time. It is the difference between lighter fluid and burning embers, the former with its flames leaping high and bright but not long or hot, and the latter with its dim light but intense, enduring heat. Zeal is a superficial spectacle, passion an internal energy. But there's yet another matter in which passion is misidentified, leading to error and excess. To experience passion means to endure a suffering, yes, but that is distinct from a state of woundedness, with its injury and hence fundamental longing for a return to a state of wholeness. True, woundedness too can fuel movement and propel toward what appears to be progress. Recently, I read an article about one of the most successful football coaches in history, in which the coach's biographer summarized his many championships as simply a continual effort to prove to his father he has what it takes. Such a quest for emotional fulfillment looks successful from a safe distance until the curtain is pulled back and the daily fruits of such festering wounds are viewed up close. Woundedness, we could say, drives forward in the hopes of internal voids being satisfied. Passion's aim is fixed on an external horizon, enduring with patience from the same Latin root, we might call it long suffering, the journey toward an end that exists beyond the self. A few years ago, I experienced such a transcendent aim, the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro. During the ascent, it slowly became clear to me the mountain was a metaphor, the expedition a symbolic experience. From the precise preparation to the taxing travel, from small injuries to intense altitude sickness, From the lonely mental exercises to the collective sharing of physical exertion, all represented aspects of passion's preeminence in our undertakings. And upon reflection, 3 attributes of passion came into focus. First, passion is rooted in relationship. I found myself on the roof of Africa because of my wife. Her bucket list item became our shared endeavor over the months of training, weeks of packing, and days of trekking. Ultimately, my passion, my animating longing, was to summit in order to support her in achieving her goal. I was there with and because of her. So it is with other passions. We ache for justice because we know people who have been harmed by injustice. We labor in conservation efforts because we have a connection to a place and its inhabitants. We pour out physical, mental, and emotional energy in our parenting because we are bonded to our children and envision their safety and growth. We persevere for years because we have an unwavering belief in the value of that invention or enterprise. Even the Creator yearns to have compassion on those he knows. He is passionate for those with whom he shares relationship. That similarity, a propensity toward relationship-rooted passion, is one of the ways we bear the divine image. Second, passion perseveres through winding ups and downs. Summiting a mountain is not a linear undertaking, nor is it free of surprises, no matter how careful the planning. A route necessarily winds around obstacles old and new, and the altitude requires that some days you climb high and sleep low to gradually acclimatize, even at the cost of expending energy to retrace a certain amount of terrain. Unpredictable weather, gear problems, injuries, and altitude effects can require constant problem solving and perseverance. Passion, as suffering for a thing that is yet to be realized, endures the hardships of the journey because it can see the summit in the distance, even when others can't. Even when clouds roll in to shroud it from everyone, the painfulness of putting one foot in front of the other is endured because of the longing for what is to come. The Redeemer himself endured suffering because of the joy of the vision set before him. Indeed, as mentioned previously, his is the original passion. Third, passion has both an ascent and a descent, and neither is a solitary endeavor. Many people made it possible for us to summit Keeley. Family members providing childcare and other resources, guides and porters expertly supporting the climb, the company and park service responsible for the logistics. But after the mountain is summited, it also has to be descended. In my case, this too required significant assistance. A team of 20 helped us up, and after the onset of altitude sickness at the summit, they helped me down, quite literally. With my arms around the shoulders of 2 other men because of my foggy head and wobbly legs, we made it back to Barafu camp, where rest and oxygen were strictly administered. Only then could I once again walk unaided. Ascending the Mount of Passion is not a free solo. Neither, it turns out, is the descent. We need others to join us, to advise us, to sharpen us, sometimes to carry us. Once we reach the heights that passion has been directing us toward, we need those same people to help us down, to enter again the valley where life is lived, because it can't be lived at 20,000 feet. That might be an element of the suffering passion entails. We have to leave the summit and come back down, which is no small feat. Yet it's one that we can accomplish together. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus instructed them, "Don't tell anyone what you have seen until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." Matthew 17:9. There's our field note on passion, and really fun exploration for me. Obviously, there's the personal element and adventure of that in the field note. What an experience that was summiting Keeley, and really opened my eyes to a lot, which was exciting. But 3 things jump out at me reflecting on the field note. It's such an important topic, in life and in midlife and in leadership generally, but especially in this stage. 3 things. One, first, just the discovery off the bat that passion means suffering. To be passionate is to suffer. And, it's easy to lose sight of that and misdefine it. And so all of a sudden we find ourselves in a place in midlife, in leadership, in a valley, or in a difficult time in a relationship, or in a change initiative, or in a new venture, where we're like, hey, I'm not feeling the passion. And what we mean by that is, this isn't fun. Like, I'm not having fun. Like, this isn't giving me energy all of a sudden. It's not exciting to me. It's not like driving, things in me that are positive emotions. That's all fine. We got to assess that. But that's not a lack of passion, because to be passionate is to suffer. To be passionate, to experience passion, it will be hard. There will be certain elements of the journey, if not the entire journey, that will be hard until we get to that thing that is the culmination of the vision that we're so passionate for. To be passionate is to suffer, to desire, because that's ultimately what it is. We're desiring to get to that mountaintop, to get to that place, that level of connection or intimacy in this relationship or in this marriage. That's passion. And it's to suffer. To love is to suffer. You want so deeply to know more, to feel more, to have more intimacy, to understand more. That's the process of loving. And you will persevere through the suffering to it. That's passion. That's what we're actually talking about when we talk about passion. And interesting that passion shares the same Latin root as our word patience, which is often translated long suffering. To be patient is to experience a similar, if not the same, suffering that we do when we're passionate for something, or passionate for someone, or some group, or some mission, or a person. Same thing. We had a guy, a Canadian brother, who was doing spiritual direction with us, and we discovered, a couple things as the Spirit revealed things. We also discovered in his strengths that he's an activator. So one part of his gift makeup, part of his personality and attributes is an activator. And an activator, if you got that element to your person, if you have that strength, it means you're ready for action. You're just continually ready to go. It's like, okay, let's go. And what we described it as was like being a coiled spring. It's just ready to spring. And it was very comforting for him, because we kept hearing as we walked through our sessions and just journeying through that season, I know I'm not patient. He kept saying, I need more patience. I'm impatient. I need more patience. And, that might be so. There might be a character issue there. There might be that fruit of the Spirit that needs to be birthed. But what he was really getting at was he just felt this tension, and he wasn't comfortable. He was uncomfortable. There was a discomfort. And we discovered part of that is because that's how you're wired. You, my friend, are wired to activate. You're like the spring that hasn't yet been released. It hasn't sprung. And that's okay. That's part. It's not a spring if it doesn't have tension. And that's what part of that is. I don't have that. So I don't have that attribute. I can activate, but I don't have that innately in my person. I need people around me who do. But then what they're going to do is compliment me, and I'll compliment them. I'll bring some peace in the middle of the tension of wanting to just spring into action. And they'll help me activate and spring when the time's right. So it all works, but all of that, there is some tension, and we have to accept that. There is some discomfort. There's some suffering. There's some suffering. And so that's what we're talking about when we're talking about passion. We're not talking about the flames leaping high in the fireplace. We're talking about the burning embers that have a duration to them, that it's taken time for that fire just to get down in there. Not just flames shooting high. We got all these pine trees in our yard, and sometimes I'll just go rake up pine needles and throw them in our fireplace in the back, in the fire pit. And, it's fun. It's fun to burn stuff. And lighting pine needles on fire is fun. You get a huge pile of pine needles, and, you just got flames shooting everywhere. And it's fun for like a few seconds. Then it's done. And no wood has actually, been lit or caught fire. Got nothing, because it was fun. It was exhilarating. It was exciting, but it doesn't last. We want to get the embers. And that's passion. That's passion. So that's first. Passion means suffering. Second, that there's a distinction between passion and woundedness. So passion can kind of feel like something's wrong to us sometimes. We're like, oh, I want this, this desire, this longing for this vision. I want the vision, and it's hard until it gets there. I've got this thing in front of me, and it's hard, but it's healthy. Whereas woundedness is a form of unhealth. When we have wounds that are driving us, it's unhealth manifesting in our lives. It's us trying to find some balm, some healing for these wounds, whatever they were. Could be trauma, could be loneliness, could be rejection, could be a lack in our life of perhaps a parent or a friend, or not having the covering around us that ever said to us, hey, you're enough. I'm proud of you. I love you. Maybe we didn't get that. That's a lack. That's a wound. And we're trying to fill it. And it drives us to achieve. It drives us to keep going. And maybe we're succeeding. And it looks like it. All the metrics are being met for success in terms of the externalities. And yet it's being driven, mobilized, catalyzed, sustained by woundedness. That won't have a happy ending. But passion will keep us going through that journey. When we can get healed, when we can live like a son who knows he's the son of a good father, when we can find the healing in community and over time, grace and truth and time and patience all coming together to create healing in those places that we've been hurt in relationships, then we will bear the fruit of the Spirit of that Father, which is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, self-control, wisdom, understanding, perseverance through the valley. So passion, different than woundedness. The suffering of passion is not a wound that is festering and not attended to. Third, passion is relational. And that was big for me in a lot of ways. You know, we live, ever since the garden, we have lived prone to isolation. You know, and in that kind of a hyper individualism. You know, it's like, no, I don't want the tree of life. I'll take that fruit, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and I'll do it on my own. I got it. I got this. And now we're cursed with it. And this is the age of the world that we live in. This individualism and isolationism, and we can get stuck in it, especially in leadership, because leadership in any capacity is it just tends to push us to a place of isolation. It's just part of the nature of it. And then in midlife, same thing happening. But it's in relationship that this passion is going to be birthed. We can't manufacture it. We can't even find it. Canyon Pathways is a thing. We're on this podcast right now. We've held retreats around the world. We got a brotherhood of men in midlife leadership, learning to live like sons and lead like fathers, because some relationships were rekindled, and out of it, a passion was born. You know, in a few years ago, I circled back with guys I hadn't talked to in 15, 20 years. And we reconnected. And I was looking, I needed to know, what's the next season? Where do I go? I didn't know. Path was obscured. Wasn't clear to me. And we didn't come together to fix that. We didn't come together to solve that. We just came together in relationship. And in that connection, vision was birthed, opportunity was recognized, and new passion was found. And that's I believe how it happens. You know, we're tempted when we feel a lack of passion to answer the wrong questions, to find answers to the wrong questions. You know, the what maybe what should I be doing? I don't feel passion. What should I be doing in this stage? You know, maybe I got to change the what. Maybe I got to throw this career away and move over to this thing. Maybe I just got to do this next thing, or the where. You know, I'm not happy here. I'm feeling passionate. I'm not excited about what's going on. I'm feeling empty. Just got to fix the where. I got to go somewhere else. I got to get out of here. I got to get out of this place, whatever it is, this family, this town, this city, this industry. Just got to change the where or the how. Maybe I just need a new hack. You know, maybe that'll do it. I'll feel passion if I can find a new thing, you know, and do it a little differently. I think we start with the who. I think passion is birthed out of the who. When we can start saying, who is this God who's creator and redeemer? And now who is a father to me, who says I'm worthy as a son, an heir. I'm not just a servant. I'm not just a hired hand. I'm not just an employee. I'm not just being tolerated. I'm welcome. That starts to change who we see ourselves as. And then that starts to bear its own fruit. And that starts to draw us not towards isolation, but towards community. Say, hey, I'm living like a son. I need to live among other sons who are experiencing this. And I want to bring this joy to other sons and daughters. And new passion is birthed out of that. And that trickles over into all of our other relationships: marriage, kids, parents, clients, customers, colleagues, congregants, friendships. And that's where we start to find it. So I think we start with who, with apologies to Simon Sinek. Don't start with why, start with who. And these other things, the why, the where, the what, the how, will start to emerge. But that's where passion is going to be. That's what brought me to the rooftop of Africa. It's passion, because of relationship with my wife, and we're seeing that same thing in this Canyon Pathways community as we discover new passion together as we learn to live like sons and lead like fathers. As I said earlier, we generally have a conversation with a Canyon brother in each episode and explore their journey into sonship. But periodically, we'll step back and kind of do a little bit deeper dive explanation of what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it at Canyon Pathways. And wanted to talk today about spiritual direction, and our view and approach to spiritual direction here at Canyon Pathways. I probably 15 years ago was kind of for the first time introduced to spiritual direction just in a passing conversation with a friend. I was out on the West Coast, and they talked to me about some spiritual direction that they were doing, that they were walking with a spiritual director and exploring that themselves. And I said, "Tell me more. This sounds fascinating." And it piqued my interest. Did a little bit of looking into it, and it wasn't until later in 2021 when we launched Canyon Pathways that this became clear that this was a part of what this community needed to move into this life of living like a son, was spiritual direction. And I like to often define it, or at least describe it in the negative, in terms of what I think spiritual direction is not. It's clearly not counseling. It's not professional therapy. It is not teaching. It is not mentoring. It's not lecturing. It's not pastoring. It's something outside of all those things. And really, the way a lot of people described it over the centuries, but especially authors that I've read on the topic in the last decades, it's as spiritual friendship. It's walking. It's a relationship where you're walking with someone, and what they're doing is listening to the Holy Spirit with you, to see what the Father is revealing in this season. It is highly relational, and that's how we describe it. We describe spiritual direction here at Canyon Pathways as a guided journey into sonship. It's an interpersonal relationship between you and your spiritual director, who is simply walking with you, listening for you, with you, to what God is saying and doing in this season of life. It's a voluntary, flexible commitment. There's no hierarchy. There's no handing down. It's not a spiritual director. It's not a guru. It's literally a person who has experience in this walking with you now through your specific journey. And it dovetails nicely with what we're talking about, not just with the journey through and into a passion, um, um, but specifically what I referenced in the field note, this summit of Kilimanjaro a couple of years ago. For me, summiting Kilimanjaro was it gave me a vision for in my life, and then for the Canyon Pathways community, what spiritual direction can be. We were guided up the mountain. Our guide Charles was incredible. I mean, if you're going to summit or attempt to summit Keeley, I recommend Charles. But he walked with us the entire way. He didn't train us. He didn't train us. He wasn't our coach in preparation. We met him the day before we actually got on the mountain, and he didn't pick the route. He didn't even pick the summit. I mean, we're the ones who said, "Hey, I'm going to climb. I think this is what I'm going through. I think this is what we want to do. We want to summit this way. We want to choose this route." He then walked that route with us, and he walked that route with the experience that he brought and the perspective that he brought, and he walked shoulder to shoulder with us. And his job was to, teach us a few things on the mountain that we might not have seen before, and that we might not have known about the landscape, the ecosystem, where to particularly, especially on Bronco Wall, where there's a pretty hard scramble, where to put your foot, where to put your hand. I mean, there's some, sometimes calls for a little technicality and technical instruction, but generally he's doing exactly what we're doing while watching us. And he's telling us, we're going to camp here. We're going to eat now. You need to eat more. Your heart rate's good. How are you feeling? Drink more water, hydrate. He's watching us. He wasn't climbing that mountain for himself. He was walking with us to the summit. And that's spiritual direction in my mind. Spiritual direction. If you would accept the invitation to Canyon Pathways Spiritual Direction, you're saying, hey, I'm walking through this season. Might be a valley. I might be on the mountain already. But, I need a little bit more. I need someone to walk this with me. That's what we're doing. We're looking at you. We're watching you. And we're listening to the Holy Spirit, to the Spirit of the Father for you. What's he saying to you as a son in this moment? And that's how we do it. And we have, some rough contours around it. We call phase 1 is the kickoff, and it's 45-minute weekly sessions over a 6-week period. We're listening through conversational exploration, some listening exercises, some times to simply be still before the Father and with him and listen in new ways. We use a couple assessment tools to really identify some strengths and some of your dispositions, because that's helpful in knowing how we're fearfully and wonderfully made. Is some of these innate things that we might not have had a language for, that can help us understand who we are as a son. Then we move into phase 2, where we have biweekly meetings. After you've received what we call a field report, it kind of pulls together in a short, concise document some of the things that we've discovered that we can then come back and sit with over time. And then into phase 3, which is an ongoing relationship where we'll continue to walk with you as needed, have sessions as needed, where we need to come back and sit and listen through your Canyon word, which has been given to you as a gift, and some of the things in the field report, all for the purpose of you walking more fully as a son, more intimately with the Father, so that out of that, you can lead like a father to many and cover those around you in your sphere of influence. So if that's of interest, this is your invitation to consider it. You can check out more on the website at canyonpathways.org. Drop us an email, contact us there. But, if you're in a place where you're saying, it's a pretty dark valley right now, or I've got a mountain I know I need to climb. There's change coming. It's good to have a guide. It's good to have a spiritual director. It's good to have a place and have someone that can walk with you in that journey as we learn to live like a son and lead like a father. Friends, hope you enjoyed this episode. Check out the show notes for links, as well as a PDF with discussion questions if you'd like to use this episode either for personal reflection or in small group meetings as a resource. Subscribe so you catch all of our episodes as we develop a language of sonship through this podcast. Thanks to the team at Maroon Harpoon for producing this episode, and to our donors who make this venture possible. And as always, thank you for being a part of the Canyon Pathways community as we together live like sons and lead like fathers.